Part 3 of those Cries Unheard. Yahweh, Kali and Yaotl. On Kali, the Indian goddess of darkness and death, deity related to the Psalm 18 descriptions of Yahweh and the descriptions of the Aztec Yaotl, it is said, quote, "At the dissolution of things, it is Kala, or Kali, time, who will devour all, and by reason of this he is called Ma-Kala, an epithet for Lord Shiva." Just on Lord Shiva, he also carries the trident, right? Now, again, that's the Shin letter, as per 2 Kings 21:7, it's the name of the Lord. It's a symbol of destruction, in essence, of the flame. However, we see within Atlantis, the centre of Atlantis, it was said that by Plato, there was a temple to Poseidon. Now, again, this is most likely Plato, who was a Greek, engaging in what's called Interpretatio Graecas, where the Greeks and the Romans as well would substitute foreign gods for equivalent native deities, right? So Poseidon, determining the etymological meaning of it, translation of it from Attic Greek, and we link it to Yahweh. So Poseidon, and also to Shiva as well. Poseidon means, in Attic Greek, Lord of the Earth. Now, as I've mentioned previously, I think in part 1 of this series, within the New Art complex, you have, and also, I mean, it's even within the Hebrew Bible, you see reference to Yahweh as Eretz Melecha, or literally the King of the Earth, or in this case, the Lord of the Earth would be a substitute for that. Lord Shiva as well is also referred to as a Lord of the Earth, a King of the Earth as well. However, Poseidon as well carries the trident, so you see the overlap here. Furthermore as well, we see with Francis Bacon, within his posthumously published work titled The New Atlantis, circa 1627, it lays out the reason for the colonisation, the New World, by the quote pilgrims, right? I'll get into the Pilgrim Society, which is a later offshoot of this cult, but these pilgrims were not Christian, let's put it that way. They hid behind Christianity, but they were more so, they were a Kabbalistic sect, to use a broad and camouflaged term, these Puritans, these pilgrims. Now, this idea of the New Atlantis, in essence, what he's inferring via that title, is that he sought to create in America the seed of the New Atlantis, right? Not that it will become the New Atlantis, but that it will be the harbinger for the New Atlantis, as we see right now. He's going to bring it into being. The New Atlantis is synonymous with the Templar idea of the New Jerusalem, of which they came to North America as well under James Sinclair in the 13th century. And that's where the Oak Island mythos and story comes from, if you will. And furthermore as well, we also see that links with the modern concept of the New World Order, the New Jerusalem, the New Atlantis, the New World Order. It implies there has been a world order previously. It implies there has been an Atlantis previously. The Atlantis story as well seems to link. Its overarching premise is very concurrent with the Tower of Babel story, right? As I've mentioned in, I think it was part 2 of this series, it's extremely important as a metaphor, as an allegory of potential historical events, right? It's a sort of composite history hidden with an allegory. But absolutely, it's extremely important, this Tower of Babel story, and with it linking to Atlantis, we can begin to see this cult and their aims and their objectives emerging, right? We, again, with this entire series, as I will go through, it becomes clear their objectives, and they're totally antithetical to humanity's objectives. And I mean that for the vast majority of humanity. I mean, what we're talking about here, it's not even a nation. It is a handful of people, a clique. I mean, even the people that are Abrahamic adherents, be them Christian or whatever, their head is also on the chopping block. They talk about doing away with the spirits of uncleanliness, extirpating it from existence within the Zohar, also within the other Haggadic texts. But absolutely, nobody escapes this. Everything must be quote cleansed. And continuing on with the description of Kali, he who will devour all, and by reason of this he is called Mahakala, an epithet for Lord Shiva. I've read that. And since thou devourest Mahakala himself, or Lord Shiva, it is thou who art the supreme primordial Kalika, right? Which Kalika sounds quite like the Shekinah. Also, the Shekinah links potentially to the Shatkona of the Vedic traditions, which is the hexagram. Because thou devourest Kala, or time, thou art Kali, the original form of all things, and because of thou art the origin of and devourest of all things, thou art called Adya, primordial one. The Adya links with the Sumerian word Abzu, that has been transmitted to us via the word abyss, right? Of course, you find it within Revelations, Abaddon. Now, yes, so Adya as well could be the Gununga gap in the Norse mythology. The Gununga gap is the chaotic chasm. It's the primordial waters of pure chaos, of nothingness and everything. Adya also sounds uncannily like Aten or Adon, so there potentially could be a link there. Adonai as well. Reassuming after dissolution thine own form, dark and formless. Again, Yahweh is referred to as dark as well, and sort of like a jinn character in the Islamic tradition. Thou alone remainest as one ineffable and inconceivable. Thou having again we see that within the Zohar. Thou alone remainest as one ineffable and inconceivable. We see in the Zohar they were lambasting the idolatrous nations for setting up idols for Asherah, or this mother goddess figure. However, we see here, kin to the Zohar, they also believe in the Hindu tradition that this mother goddess is ineffable and inconceivable. Thou having a form, yet art thou formless, though thyself without beginning, multiform by the power of Maya, yet thou art the beginning of all, creatrix, protectress, and destructress, that thou art, unquote. Child sacrifice was also a rite of Kali, and many deities within the Hindu pantheon. In an article titled, quote, India's killer godsmen and their sacrificial children, unquote, it is written, quote, the 6-year-old Krishna's mutilated corpse was left only a few meters from his home. His clothes were torn, his belongings missing, and his eyes had dozens of marks from needle piercings under them. He had slit his throat with a knife, says Guraba, 45, Krishna's father, and they had made a hole in the back of his head as if with a drill machine. More astoundingly, why, says his father, victims of human sacrifices are usually poor, disabled, or belong to weaker sections of society, people whose disappearances are more likely to go unnoticed. There's a preference for boys age 3 to 12 years. Again, as we've read, is in the Keys of Solomon. I think, if I recall correctly, in the previous part, they desire virgins, right? Of course. But tantrics also take girls who have just started menstruating, and children who were breech babies. Again, the same thing. The same thing. When these children are sacrificed, they are usually mutilated. Their ears and nose are sliced off to unleash streams of blood, which is collected in vessels or chalices and offered to the goddess Kali. Now again, this is all the same as the affair of poisons testimony that we just read in the second part of this series. In Krishna's case, a hole was drilled into his head to facilitate this. Several tantrics are known to drink the blood during the ritual. Again, as we saw, the mistress of the powerful drink. That's what Ashtaroth and Anat it went by, that was one of their epithets. In Ugrat, 13th century BC Ugrat, which is usually performed on new moon and full moon nights. There have also been cases where the accused savoured mutilated organs after boiling them, unquote. Now, just on that, new moon and full moon nights, right? Just want to... There's actually several passages I just want to cite that link Yahweh to this, of course. It states in 2 Chronicles 31:3, he also appointed the king's portion of his goods for the burnt offerings, namely for the morning and evening burnt offerings, or sacrifices, and the burnt offerings for the Sabbaths, and for the new moons, and for the fixed festivals, as it is written in the law of the Lord. Again, for the new moons. There's several passages in the Old Testament make this same statement, that all of the festivals, the major burnt offerings, will take place on the new moon. Furthermore as well, again, as we see in Isaiah 66:23, from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all mankind will come and bow down before me, says Yahweh. 2 Chronicles 31:3 states, quote, and again this is in reference to full moon or the new moon. Moreover, the term Yahweh, I don't know if I get into it here. No, I don't think I do. I may repeat myself, but the Semitic term for moon is Yarich. That developed into Yaru, then Yah, then to Yahu, and then Yahweh. Now, that was all from the Hyksos and Shasu tradition. But yes, Yarich, Yah, right? Whenever you hear Yah, really it links to the moon, right? It's what it is based upon. That also links with the asuras, right? Which, and I'll get into it within my book and probably other videos, but we can trace this, based on logical inference, of course, we can trace this group, this Kabbalistic group, this merchant elite, or the ruling class, if you will. We can trace them back to northern India around about 3102 BC. Now, as we see with this group, this Kabbalistic group, is a sort of pattern within their history. They have been banished and exiled, and so when we look, for example, within India, around about 3102 BC, northern India, the Indus Valley region and such, we actually see this merchant class were also banished or exiled, but they were worshippers of the asuras, right? Now there's two classes of heavenly beings. Actually, there's more, but let's just broadly speaking, within the Hindu religion, within the Vedic tradition, if you will, in all of its various sects, there are two classes of beings, heavenly beings, the Devas and the Asuras. The Devas, again, broadly speaking, are the good gods. The Asuras are the evil gods, if you will. Now, this can be thought of as, say, the Devas are the Olympian gods, and the Asuras are, if you will, the Titans, right? So the anti-gods. One seeks the natural order, if you will, and the other seeks the inversion of that natural order. So, again, broadly speaking, so when this individual group was exiled, and again, they were a merchant class, they were using exactly the same tactics they use everywhere they go. This quote-unquote Kabbalistic group, if you will. Now, they went westward. Now, eventually they ended up in Western Asia, right? What we would know as Syria today, what was known then as Amuru, or the Amorite homeland. Again, this is prior to the invasion of Acadia and Sumeria by the Amorites. But anyway, within the Iranian or Persian civilization, again, Proto-Persian at that point, really, that term Ashura developed into Ahur or Ahura, which was seen within the Zoroastrian religion as Ahura Mazda, right? Now, everything was flipped upside down, it was inverted. As we see with this group, wherever they go, they cause an inversion of everything, of the natural order. Again, it goes back to that battle between the Devas and the Asuras, as I've stated. But the Devas were seen as the evil ones, right? The Asuras, or the Ahuras, were seen as the benevolent class of deities. Now, the further west they got, that term Ahura developed into Yahura, or Yahu, or Yaru. Going all the way back, this is where these terms derive from, right? And funnily enough, when this group, this merchant class who worshipped the Asuras, were banished from northern India, again around about 3100 BC, that links with the onset of the Kali Yuga, or the final destructive cycle of the overarching Yuga cycle, which has 4 component parts. The Kali Yuga is the age of confusion, or the age of ignorance, if you will. So, as we see right now, wars, destruction, no one gets along, they're irrational, they have no soul. A lot of people have no soul, they're husks. It's a total, the Kali Yuga is a total inversion of everything, of all existence. It's an unravelment of it, really. And at the end of the Kali Yuga is the end of time, the end of days, right? And again, a revamp and a radical reformation or rebirth of the next Yuga cycle. Each Yuga cycle is 4,320,000 years. Humans, or the age of Manu, if you will, the age of the human, is 71 Yuga cycles, right? Obviously, Ashura, if it links with Yahweh through Ahura and Yaru, Yahu, and then Yahweh, Ashur links obviously with Ishtar, Isis, Ashtaroth, and obviously Yahweh's Asherah, and even Saturn's Rhea, which is a complete abbreviation of Ashura. Ash meaning fire, and Ra, which is a Egyptian loan word, obviously just in this context, which is the sun. So literally the fire of the sun. Yahweh is the one moon, right? Weh is an Egyptian divine epithet, meaning one, a capital one. Hence the Adonai Echad, right? The Lord is one. So the fire of the sun and the one moon. This is exactly the same type of sacrificial rites we see to a similar goddess, namely Ashtaroth or Asherah, at least in spirit and characteristics rather. As we shall see further on, Kali and Yahweh's consort, Asherah, share commonalities and historical congruencies that cannot be ignored. Yahweh and Asherah, along with the description of the Son of Man from Revelation, also share parallels. Moreover, to add another dimension to this, we see that these rituals are performed on new moon or full moon nights, and this parallels the Abrahamic preference for the moon over the sun. We see that appear within Zohar as well. We see that in Numbers 28:11, it describes the new moon festival of the Hebrews as thus, quote, "At the beginnings of your Hodesh, or new moons or months, you shall offer a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 bulls from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish," unquote. The noun Yahweh also links with the moon via the Kemetic Hyksos Ya or Ya, meaning moon, and the Semitic Yaru, meaning again moon, or Yarich, meaning moon. The cities of Jericho and Beth Yerach, right, the same Ya prefix, are named after this deity, being Yahweh, or the moon, to which it seems it can be fairly substantiated from the archaeological record that the Israelites actively worshipped this deity, or worshipped the moon. Teotihuacan, a city part of the Aztec Empire at the time of Cortes, also had a veneration for the moon. We see the second largest pyramid within Mesoamerica being none other than the Pyramid of the Moon. Within this pyramid, sacrificial rites to a great goddess took place, typically at the start of each new moon. Again, No surprise. Just like the previously mentioned Hindu and Hebrew rites. Before we describe the rites, we must discuss the description of the great goddess and what she represented. The great goddess is thought to have been a goddess of the underworld, darkness, the earth, water, war, and possibly even creation itself, just like Kali. Moreover, she is typically depicted with owls and also the jaguar, of which also was associated with the jaguar as well, to which Yahweh is likewise associated with the lion. The owl naturally is seen throughout the occult and Kabbalah, but it stretches back to the originating point of this mother goddess motif, and that is the Near Eastern deity of Ishtar, Ashuratum, or Inanna, again all cognate to Asherah or Ashtaroth. This great goddess was also depicted in several violent forms, with claws for hands and a wide mouth with teeth, thus implying she is a spirit of devourment or destruction. Very similar to the Rakshasas, or the hungry ghosts of the Vedic tradition, which I will cover in another video, actually 2 videos in fact, but they are also linked with the asuras in many ways, or within many of the mythological stories. Now again, asuras, or the evil deities within the Hindu tradition. Funnily enough, the ahuras within the Zoroastrian tradition were actually seen as the inverse, the good deities, which is very peculiar. Ahura may link to Yaru or Yarich. Again, Ahura, Yahura, that got abbreviated down at the further west into Asia. This common religion travelled. It got abbreviated down into Yaru, Yahu, Yarich, and obviously finally into Yahweh. So just bear that in mind as well. Fascinatingly, on the Aztec Teotihuacan schism in belief, it's stated by Esther Pastore that, quote, although I cannot prove this precisely, I sense that the Aztec goal was military glory and staving off the collapse of the universe, whereas the Teotihuacan aim seems to have been the creation of a paradise on earth or a utopia, unquote. Very interesting indeed. Is this a reference to the kingly and priestly line and their visions of the future, to which now we see they've been synthesized via this web of conspiracy and the web of secret societies. In 2004, several discoveries were made at the pyramidal temple of the Great Goddess, or the Pyramids of the Moon, where it suggested grisly sacrifices and a materialistic society. Again, just like our own society, of course. The pyramids of the Sun and Moon are both extremely ancient, being built by an unknown people around 2,000 years ago, though I would suggest that given the biblical overlap and other surrounding evidence, of which I shall detail in my new book, we can fairly estimate these people to have been Hebrews. A staggering claim, I know, but one that I shall prove in my new book thoroughly. The entire complex arose anomalously at this time, with the metropolis encompassing 8 square miles and being meticulously planned. Again, 8. It's very peculiar. Of course, we don't know what miles those are. The Aztecs probably didn't use that unit of measurement, but yes, it's peculiar nonetheless. It is said of the new discoveries at the time that, quote, what we have found in this excavation suggests that a certain kind of mortuary ritual took place inside the tomb before it was filled in, said Saburo Sugiyama, a professor at Aichi Prefectural University in Japan and at Arizona State University. Quote, it is hard to believe that the ritual consisted of clean symbolic performances. It is most likely that the ceremony created a horrible scene of bloodshed with sacrificed people and animals, unquote. The victims had their hands bound behind their backs. The decapitated bodies appear to have been tossed rather than arranged on one side of the burial. Another statement from this article goes thus, quote, Deepak Sarma, Professor of Religious Studies at Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, I presume Ohio, however, argues that references to human sacrifices were made much earlier in the Rig Veda. This is in regards to Hinduism, by the way, I should have stated that. In the Rig Veda, a cosmic man is sacrificed in order to generate the universe and the social caste systems. Indeed, this is similar to the Aztec belief concerning sacrifice and child sacrifice. That the Aztec belief, as opposed to the Teotihuacan belief, was that they had to sacrifice to maintain the cosmos, maintain the universe. So the Hindus believed the same thing, according to the Rig Veda. Yes, that it was necessary to perpetuate the equilibrium of the universe. In conjunction, the dancing Shiva statue at CERN also conveys this, with Shiva dancing on the demon, and thus realising that to maintain the cosmic flow and balance, that he must allow the demon to persist to thence maintain this the friction necessary for the motion of life. Of course, child and human sacrifice takes this innocuous and self-evident truth of dualism in a far grislier direction. So this cult really are children of the void. That is what they seek, and they seek a return to that abyssal blackness, right? The primordial waters. Again, they want to become the Adam Kadmon, the primordial man. They desire to destroy everything and to bring everything back to a state of uncreation or non-creation, non-existence, where pure potentiality reigns and they can become gods of this void, if you will. I know that sounds absolutely insane, but if you read Harari's work along with these notes, again, you merely have to email me. My email will be in the description below, the description box below rather. I'll send you these notes, read these notes, read Harari's work Homo Deus all the way through. You will come to no other conclusion, I can assure you, of what is afoot here. So anyone who supports the Bible black beast of perdition, also known as Yahweh, is merely a foot soldier, spiritually and intellectually, wittingly or unwittingly, for this New World Order and its aims, along with the countless children it slaughters by deceit, callous trickery, as is their modus operandi. They are possessed by the spirits of death that masquerades as life and require post-haste an exorcism by the truth. I just wish to state as well that Kali, or death, is said to, in the end, as per the above record, destroy Shiva, or life, in this context. Like our own deaths, all shall return to the Abzu, or primordial waters, of the original form. That place of everything, that emanates from nothing, where blackness dwells in the midst of light, that place that has form in its formlessness.